Nasal discharge. Either it can be because of traumatic injury to the nose and paranasal sinuses, or it is associated with some diseases like malignancy. Then comes the rhinosporidiosis, angiofibroma. It is very important disease which presents with profuse nasal discharge. Or the people who have habit of picking the nose, putting some instruments to clean the nose. In those cases also because of trauma in the little area, they present with frequent episodes of blood-stained nasal discharge. Foul-smelling nasal discharge again indicates a chronic infection or the long-standing foreign bodies or malignancies which tends to retain the secretions. When the secretions are retained, they invite a secondary infection, and because of that there is a foul-smelling discharge. Now, this one very important dictum we have to remember, that foul smelling blood stained nasal discharge, blood stained and foul smelling. In elderly people, always it indicates a possibility of malignancy. Whereas foul smelling blood stained discharge in a child always suspect a long standing infected foreign body. So these patients need to be taken seriously. Then how we approach these patients with nasal discharge. Obviously, detailed history, as I told, if we take a proper history, 60 to 80% of the diseases can be diagnosed on the history itself. Onset, if the patient tells the history that when I get up in the morning, suddenly I get bouts of sneezing, 15-20 times sneezing, and that is followed by watery nasal discharge. So we are probably dealing with a allergic or vasomotor type of rhinitis. Some people say that when I go for outing, when I am roaming outside, and when I come across dust, again sneezing starts and watery nasal discharge. Probably we are dealing with case of allergic rhinitis. If the patient tells I have a nasal obstruction, which is progressive, initially it was unilateral and then it progressed to bilateral. It is associated with watery nasal discharge and sneezing. Probably we are dealing with ethmoid polyps. This is how the history onset tells us. Duration, continuous, long-standing watery nasal discharge. It can be CSF rhinuria or allergic or vasomotor rhinitis. Progression, this is also important. We have to ask whether the discharge was purulent right from the beginning or initially it was watery, then mucoid and then became purulent. In case of a enterochoanal polyp, initially it can be watery associated with sneezing and all that. But whenever there is stasis of secretions and when there is a secondary infection, then it tends to turn into the purulent nasal discharge or mucoid, mucopurulent discharge. This is how progression also is important, which tells us that initially the disease was the allergic, then it went to the infective pathology. Aggravating and relieving factors, exposure to the dust, exposure to the dust mites, exposure to the pets in the house, exposure to the pollen grains, and then starting the nasal discharge with bouts of sneezing. That tells us that probably it is allergic rhinitis. Patient tell that I go to the medical shop and I take some anti-cold medication, maybe cetirizine or Flucold or any kind of tablet which has an antihistaminic, and if they tell that I get relief after that tablet, probably again they are having a allergic type of rhinitis which responds to the antihistamine. So this history also tells us what disease probably the person is suffering from. Associated complaints, nasal obstruction. If there is an obstruction along with a discharge, probably some space occupying pathology is going on. It can be hypertrophic turbinate, it can be nasal polyp, it can be benign tumor, it can be malignant tumor, and only watery nasal discharge, it can be CSF rhinuria or simple allergic rhinitis. So associated complaints are very important. Anosmia. Nowadays again, anosmia is a very important symptom of COVID disease, COVID-19. Many patients are presenting with no other complaints than anosmia and loss of taste. So that also has to be kept in mind. Associated complaints will clinch the diagnosis. Bloodstained and foul smelling, I just told you. Long-standing foreign body malignancy can be there. After taking this all detailed history, in the past history, what we should mainly stress for is the history of any surgery in the past. While we were discussing the ethmoid polyps, we have seen that recurrence is the feature of ethmoid polyposis. It's not a complication, it's a feature. Sometimes what we see that in case of enterocoinal polyp, if the enterocoinal polyps comes again, we can call it as a complication, because if the surgery is done properly for enterocoinal polyp and polyp is excised in toto, enterocoinal polyp, along with the widening of maxillary ostium, proper widening, then the enterocoinal polyp should not recur, right? If we, while surgical excision, if enterocoinal polyp is removed partly and part of it is left in the maxillary sinus, then there are chances that enterocoinal polyp can recur. So this we may call that it is a complication, that it was not treated optimally. But this is not the case with ethmoid polyps. Let the ethmoid polyps get a regression by medical treatment like oral course of steroid nasal sprays, or by surgery like functional endoscopic sinus surgery or ethmoidectomy. By any means, either by medical treatment or surgical treatment, even if the ethmoid polyps they regress, they again come back after 6 months or 1 year if the patient discontinues the treatment. So this is how that helps us in making the diagnosis. Patient will tell that I had a complaint of watery nasal discharge, sneezing. Later it turned on to be mucoid. I used to have a heaviness in my head, nasal obstruction. I was not able to breathe through the nose. Then I undergone a surgery and polyps were removed. I was fine for 6 months to 1 year, but again now I am having those same complaints. So probably it's a ethmoid polyps. So recurrence is the feature that tells us the diagnosis, right? So that we have to stress in past history. Any history of granulomatous diseases like tuberculosis, leprosy in the family, that also has to be evaluated in the past history. When it comes to the examination, first obviously it starts with the lifting the tip with the thumb. If there are huge ethmoid polyps, they grow more anteriorly. Enterocoinal polyps, they grow more posteriorly. Enterocoinal polyps are generally not seen on anterior rhinoscopy or lifting the tip with the thumb. But ethmoid polyps, as they grow anteriorly, they will be seen on examination of the nostril by lifting the tip with the thumb. After that, we have to do anterior rhinoscopy. What all we see on anterior rhinoscopy? Anterior part of the nasal septum, anterior part of inferior and middle turbinate, anterior part of the floor of the nose, and in some cases, when the nose is very roomy, we can even see the roof of the nose. Then we can see, is there any polyp, mass, or growth? Is there a turbinate hypertrophy? That all we can see on anterior rhinoscopy. If we see a mass lesion, then we do a probe test. That also we have discussed last time. What is a probe test? But this probe test is contraindicated in case where there is a history of bleeding or epistaxis. So generally we don't do probe test if there is history of epistaxis. Why? Because this is we are doing a OPD examination, and during a OPD examination, if the patient has a history of bleeding and inadvertently if we touch the mass lesion with the probe, probably the patient will start torrentially bleeding through the nose. Right? So that's why the probe test is not done when there is a history of epistaxis. Otherwise, when there is a mass lesion, the probe test will give a very useful information. First thing, it will tell us whether the mass lesion is solid or cystic. Consistency we will come to know. One second, hold on. we were discussing about the probe test. So it will tell us whether it is liquid, whether it is cystic or solid. Then again probe test will tell us the origin from where it is originating, either from the lateral wall or from the medial wall. Then after this we can see whether we can pass the probe all around the mass. If we can pass the probe all around, then probably it is a polypoid lesion, anteriorly at least. But if we are not able to pass the probe laterally, then probably it is something which is attached to the lateral nasal wall. So the mass lesions which bleed on deep probing, they are neoplastic or it can be hypertrophic turbinate. The polyps generally don't bleed on touch. So probe test is very important. That will tell us whether the lesion is single or it is lesions are multiple. That also information we get on probe test. So it's a very important clinical test, not to be done if there is a history of epistaxis. But what all information we can get by probe test, whether the mass is solid or cystic, whether it is single or multiple, whether it is from where it is coming. Is it coming from lateral wall or is it coming from medial wall? Does it bleed or it won't bleed on touch? So remember, very common confusion in day-to-day clinical practice is to differentiate between the hypertrophic turbinate and a polyp. Many times we see a hypertrophic turbinate and we label it as a polyp. But this probe test is very important test which helps to differentiate a hypertrophic turbinate from polyp. If we do the probe test, if it is soft and cystic, it is a polyp, whereas turbinate will be hard because it is a bone. Then polyp will be insensitive to touch. Turbinate will be sensitive to touch. Patient will get pain when we do the probe test. The polyp will not bleed on probe test, whereas if we probe a bit deeper with little force, then turbinate bleeds. Then we cannot pass the probe laterally in case of hypertrophic turbinate, whereas in case of polyp, we can pass the probe all around. Then if we apply a decongestant like oxymetazoline or xylometazoline, the polyp will not shrink, but turbinate shrinks. So these are very important differences. Then the posterior rhinoscopy. When we do a posterior rhinoscopy, antrochoanal polyps, we know they grow more posteriorly. So we can see the polyp. Even if it is not seen anterior rhinoscopy, we can see posteriorly a grape-like mass, single mass, but translucent, white or grayish, hanging in the nasopharynx. Cold spatula test will tell us about the air blast. Paranasal sinus examination for tenderness, for redness, erythema, all has to be done carefully. And then if we suspect a sinus disease, then we do a X-ray or CT scan. We get a very elaborate information on doing CT scan, which is probably missed on routine X-rays. That's why nowadays we prefer a CT scan than a X-ray when we are dealing with a nasal disease. Then in suspected case of a mass lesion, we take a biopsy. But biopsy has to be taken with due precautions, keeping a possibility of bleeding and all the measures ready to stop the bleeding, like readiness for putting a nasal pack, Botroclot and oxymetazoline like medicines which help us in stopping the bleeding. So biopsy has to be taken with due care.